slammed the doors of a Brooklyn synagogue during a holy celebration with thousands of congregants inside. Thankfully, no one was hurt. The driver eventually exits his car, and witnesses were able to identify him to police. Also saying the man appeared angry, yelling at people nearby, saying things like, quote, "I don't know, it slipped," while gesturing to his car. The man was promptly arrested, telling police his car suffered mechanical issues. The Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice is now also opening an investigation into this incident.
Following the Customs and Border Patrol-involved fatal shooting of Alex Preddy in Minneapolis this past weekend, top Democrats on Capitol Hill are making demands, threatening to withhold their vote towards passing federal spending legislation on approving spending for Homeland Security, potentially risking another government shutdown if members of the GOP don't comply. Senator Dave McCormick of Pennsylvania called this messaging from Democrats political theater.
This is part of a broader problem where they, as you say, have lost their minds when the president is doing what he said he would do, which is secure the border and then particularly send those violent criminals back to the places they came from or prosecute them.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio testifying before Senate lawmakers yesterday, defending U.S. operations in Venezuela, as well as the capture of Nicolas Maduro.
We made multiple attempts to get Maduro to leave voluntarily and to avoid all of this because we understood that he was an impediment to progress. You couldn't make a deal with this guy. Okay? This guy has made multiple deals. He's broken every one of them.
Former Navy Captain Brent Sadler with the Heritage Foundation says there's still a lot of work to be done.
This is for Venezuelans to change their own country. This is not nation building or regime change on American terms. It's the United States being the muscle behind to open up a space to allow democratic processes to come back and flourish once again in Venezuela.
The FTC ramping up efforts to protect your kids online, promising new age verification. Teresa Payton, former White House Chief Information Officer, says kids are very smart.
I mean, yeah, for example, in sort of today's construct, they'll just make up a birth date. If you ask, show me a picture to show me that you're old enough, they can hold up their older brother or older sister's picture. So we know that age verification has to be something that is easy to do, hard to work around, and we certainly don't want to collect a lot of personal identifiable information that could be hacked. So it's a really tricky situation, and it's good that we spent an entire day talking about the safety of our children because our children are our future.
School choice has its share of critics, but Concerned Women for America thinks it's a good idea. Chris Woodward has more.
Maggie McNeely of Concerned Women for America said her organization is pro-allowing parents to choose whatever school is best for their children and their family, so that their children can have the opportunity to thrive to the fullest extent of their potential.
I think it's all about parents having the opportunity to choose rather than for kids being assigned a school based on just their zip code.
Opponents of school choice argue that, among other things, if we allow more dollars to go to public school alternatives, we will widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots. But Concerned Women for America does not see it that way.
From our perspective, right now you're already doing that because you're setting a red line. Forcing kids to go to schools within their zip code is already setting a red line. You're saying you can't go to a better school because you have to go to the school that you are assigned to.
Concerned Women also believes that school choice means more competition.
You're going to allow public schools to innovate, to be more competitive and actually be a product and an environment that's actually going to benefit kids. And you're also going to allow other innovative educators and people who work in the education field to start charter schools or start private schools or extracurricular activities that kids can access and supplement their education. So rather than taking funds away from the public schools, it's actually going to help public schools as well as everyone else who works in the education space.
I'm Chris Woodward.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildman and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney Empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
Jenna Ellis in the morning on American Family Radio.
I love talking about the things of God because of truth and the biblical worldview. The U.S. Constitution obligates our government to preserve and protect the rights that our founders recognize come from God, our Creator, not our government. I believe that Scripture in the Bible is very clear that God is the one that raised up each of you, and God has allowed us to be brought here to this specific moment in time.
This is Jenna Ellis in the morning.
Good morning. It is Thursday, January 29th, and all eyes are still on Minnesota for a variety of reasons. In fact, Tom Homan, who has now been sent to Minnesota, he's basically the border czar for the Trump administration, who I personally think will do a much better job than Kristi Noem with the situation ongoing in Minnesota, is standing by to hold a press conference with Trump supporters there on the ground. So we'll have an update for you if they start that during this hour that we are live. Meanwhile, just a few minutes ago, an announcement that Democrat Senator Amy Klobuchar has launched her bid for the Minnesota governor just weeks after Tim Walz said he would not seek re-election following political fallout from the state's massive Somali daycare fraud scandal. This coming from Fox News. Klobuchar said, "These times call for leaders who can stand up and not be rubber stamps of this administration, but who are also willing to find common ground and fix things in our state." So my first question for Klobuchar, and we will, of course, invite her on this program as a candidate. It will be shocking to me if she accepts, but, hey, we're here. We're always willing to talk. And my first question to her would be, well, what are you going to do about the Somali daycare fraud scandal? Because isn't it shocking that nobody is talking about that? We are only talking about the ICE confrontations and the two individuals that were killed following those confrontations, which in fact is the other breaking story, that new footage appears to show Alex Preddy, that individual who was killed by ICE in that altercation a few days ago, kicking and spitting on federal agents' cars and just trying to insert himself into their business and obstructing him as early as 2 weeks or about a week before the incident that led to his death. So this is why facts matter. I continue to say that we need to wait for all of the facts about a scenario to come out, context around it, before we can just go, on social media and trust some of these influencers that are ranting and raving about how terrible ICE is and suggesting that somehow they should withdraw from Minnesota. But that's all that you see across TikTok and Instagram. In fact, I was talking to my good friend Meg Basham last night from Daily Wire, who was saying that she's going to focus on a lot of these Instagram, particularly female influencers that are just, wanting this like love and compassion sort of woke Christian nonsense that are not actually coming from a biblical worldview. And we absolutely agree here, because I am going to be launching a TikTok. In fact, it is up already. You can tell your kids, your grandkids to follow, if they have that platform, at Real Jenna Ellis, because we are going to start posting more videos on TikTok and Instagram, Facebook, obviously X. That's a little bit different of a platform on X. It's a little more politically driven. And so we're kind of targeting more of where the young people are going on TikTok and Instagram in particular, to combat this whole narrative that is just being spewed everywhere from leftists and woke Christians with biblical truth. So helping me with that is Hannah Creel. You may know her as my neighbor and Jack's mom, and one of my favorite people in the world, but she also happens to be a social media expert, and she is helping me with those platforms and videos. So she joins me this morning. And good morning, Hannah. And I think this is just such a perfect moment to launch this kind of a campaign, if you will. This is a social media campaign to really target some of these platforms and give young people a way to go and say, well, wait, if I'm looking at all these videos and I don't know what the biblical answer, the truthful answer is, now they have a place where they can come and get answers.
Hey, Jenna, good morning. Thanks for having me on. But yes, you're so right. And we've been thinking about this and having these conversations for a while now. This is where the younger generation is at. They're on TikTok, they're on Instagram. And, even we had those thoughts of, is this really the space for you to be on that you wanted to be on? But, the truth is those platforms, TikTok, Instagram, they're really shaping how people think every single day, especially a younger generation. They have questions. They're seeing these headlines, and ICE is a great example right now, what's going on in Minnesota. So instead of backing away from it, we just felt like it was really important to step into it and do it well and do it truthfully from a biblical perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to go where the young people are is so important because we obviously want as many people as we can listening to this program, to our other programs on AFR. But, the reality is a lot of young people are not necessarily aware that we're here yet. And so we want to go to those platforms where the audience already is, in addition, obviously, to having our great radio and podcast platforms, but then to give them those short form videos and hopefully say, for even more, you can come here and you can listen to some of the great pastors here that are on American Family Radio, all of this content that some who might be confused about what they're seeing on those platforms, they don't have the biblical answer. Maybe their churches aren't teaching through some of these answers, and they're kind of staying away from the controversial headlines in politics. They need to have those answers. So what's the strategy in your mind in terms of doing specifically response videos? Why is that medium really where the focus is for young people right now? Because I find, as a millennial, I find it fascinating that your generation actually calls people on the phone, actually listens to videos with the sound on, some of those things that I actually feel really old that I don't do anymore. But why is that the focus of the younger generation?
I mean, yes. So response videos, for anyone who isn't familiar, it's a newer style of content where influencers, creators, just anyone on social media can take a viral clip, a headline, a comment, a cultural moment, and directly respond to that clip or whatever someone else is talking about. And, instead of asking someone to care about a new topic, you're joining an existing conversation, and those response videos are directly plugging into what people are already talking about. And I think a good example of this, and one of our motivations to kind of get this going, is I'm a little bit different. I am in the younger generation, but I view social media content a little bit differently than a lot of people my age. But my sister is, a great example.
Mm-hmm.
She's in her 20s. Just like you said, she's not going to turn into a radio station. So she would come to you and ask all of these questions about things that are happening in the world or videos that she is seeing online, and kind of just, not looking for a hot take. She genuinely wanted to know what the Bible actually says about what she is seeing and hearing, whether it's from her friends or something on social. And she was listening and really taking in and trusted what you had to offer from a political, whether, it's your political opinion and how it ties back, to the Bible and what Christians as we should think. So I think that's when it really clicked for me. And that's kind of our strategy moving forward, is to kind of go after the people like my sister who are asking these questions. And there's a lot of young people out there doing the same thing. They want to have somewhere they can go that they can trust and get a good thought process of what's happening in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And, my little brother as well, who's, in his 20s, is the same way. I mean, on our family group chat, he is very involved in news of the day and politics and things, and is a very solid Christian, just like your sister, and wants to know, okay, I'm seeing all of this, and he'll send, reels from other people and say, well, Jenna, what's the response to this? And so we'll kind of go through it. And so realizing realizing that, these aren't just, two people that are coming to us because, we know them, Hannah. It's that, they're a representative sample of so many more young people who are Christians. They're looking for truth, which I think is so amazing about this generation and such an opportunity that they're actually looking for answers and that we can influence them toward a rational biblical perspective and give them content that can combat these narratives, because if we don't, who else will? I mean, there are a couple of examples in some spaces, people, I'm thinking like Allie Beth Stuckey, good friend who has a lot of biblically driven content, especially, for women and moms. You absolutely have, the journalists like Meg Basham. But really, I think we're in a unique space to have a biblical and legal view from my experience and background, to be able to do some of these videos with biblical truth and with authority based on my experience, and now taking your social media expertise of understanding these platforms that I don't as much. I think that's going to be such a great forum to be able to offer young people who are genuinely searching for truth, hey, here's the biblical response.
Exactly. And what I love about this for you, Jenna, is it's not changing who you are or what you're doing day to day. You're already explaining these things clearly and, biblically and truthfully. It's just putting those conversations and these topics in front of people who might not be tuning in anywhere else. And this fits so naturally with the mission of AFA. The message is not changing. We're just meeting people where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And saying, here, now we can have this dialogue because as Proverbs says, the first person to come and state their case seems like they're accurate until another one comes and proves them wrong. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but basically you need both sides. And it's not just both sides when you're talking about a perspective that's wrong, it's distorting the Bible, or it's factually wrong or legally wrong or morally wrong. So it's not both sides as in, pick your truth. It's that if there's only one side out there that's claiming to come from a fact-based or a moral, quote unquote, compassionate side or biblical truth, then, and nobody is correcting them, then it's only leaving content on these platforms for biblical Christians who are young to be influenced and maybe trust what they shouldn't. And so I'm very excited for this, and I hope that all of those listening, if you have an Instagram or Facebook, please follow me on those platforms at Jenna Ellis Media. The TikTok, probably not a lot of our listeners have that platform, but I'm sure that at least one or two young people that have that platform. So follow us there at Real Jenna Ellis. We're going to be posting those videos, and I would invite you. And we said this yesterday, and I was really excited, Hannah, to get a lot of response actually saying, give us your ideas. If your kids or grandkids or you see a Facebook reel, an Instagram reel that is, maybe well-meaning or maybe is a total woke leftist that you think would be a good response video because it's gotten a lot of engagement, send it our way, Jenna@afr.net, and suggest some of these videos. What are some, Hannah, that we've seen lately? I know we have a couple posted already, but what do you look for in a response video for us to respond to?
Yes, and I think this is where we're going to have some fun. There's really not a whole lot of boundaries because I think that there's a lot of topics out there, and I think it's unlimited in what we can respond to. So, some ideas, I think, and kind of pulling from my own experiences and my sisters and, other people I know, another topic that we talked about doing is, with just the political climate, it's, how do you navigate friendships where maybe you don't always see things eye to eye? Is that okay? Where's the boundary with that? When is it no longer a good, beneficial friendship if you have someone that just believes things and sees things a lot differently than you? So, that's one topic we can really dive into. Another one, I sent you one this morning. The Minnesota conversation is just everywhere. What's going on there, the narratives. So I think And
Yeah,
I think this is where I would love to have you jump on. And
yeah,
kind of say what's
that's
really
awesome.
happening.
Well, we got to end it here, Hannah, but I so appreciate you jumping onto this. We're going to be so excited to see how it goes. And I personally would love to see other AFR hosts eventually jump on this as well. And we'll see how it goes. Follow at Real Jenna Ellis on TikTok. We'll be right back with more.
Hi, I'm Doug Chamberlain, host of Family Health Checkup. For over 30 years, Samaritan members have come together to share medical costs and lift each other up in prayer. Now, I'm excited to tell you about Redeem Health Share Ministry, Samaritan's next generation of healthcare sharing. Redeem offers affordable, flexible programs that reflect your values and help you manage medical costs with confidence. Each month, members contribute a share amount to help pay each other's medical bills, and you choose the providers and treatments that are right for your family. It's not insurance, it's a community of believers supporting one another through life's health challenges. So, whether it's a routine visit or a sudden emergency, there's a caring Christian community walking with you every step of the way. Redeem Health Share. It's more than healthcare. It's hope. It's healing. It's faith in action. Call 1-844-REDEEM-0 today. Join the movement. Share joyfully. Live redeemed.
Do you believe in the absolute inerrancy of God's holy word? Do you believe in the power of the Holy Spirit to radically change lives and empower us to live like Christ? At Wesley Biblical Seminary, we believe God is raising up a movement of people across our nation and across the world who hold fast to the authority of the Bible and the hope of holiness. We are working today to equip tomorrow's pastors and Christian leaders through biblical and theological education and practical ministry that's accredited, affordable, online, and highly personal. Our programs include undergraduate, master's, and doctoral degrees, certificate programs, and even training for lay people. So whatever your next step is in being equipped for ministry, we're here for you. And if you believe these are the kinds of pastors we need leading our churches in the future, we invite you to learn more about partnering with us through giving. Learn more about Wesley Biblical Seminary by visiting us at wbs.edu today.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes. Stand by for news and commentary next. Christian leaders say Chick-fil-A has waffled on same-sex marriage. More than a decade ago, Christians around the nation rallied to defend the fast food restaurant after gay marriage activists declared war. They tried to put Chick-fil-A out of business after the son of founder Truett Cathy said marriage is between one man and one woman. But it appears there's been a cultural shift at Chick-fil-A, a Utah franchise posting photos on its Facebook page celebrating the marriage of two men. In recent years, Chick-fil-A stopped donating to Salvation Army and the Fellowship of Christian Athletes after pressure from gay rights groups. Governor Mike Huckabee said his decision to lead that nationwide campaign to support Chick-fil-A was his biggest regret. And many loyal customers are wondering if Chick-fil-A's values were simply a marketing ploy to endear themselves to Christians. Regardless, traditional values have been taken off the menu at Chick-fil-A, just like the chicken salad sandwich and the coleslaw. I'm Todd Stearns.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. Well, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was in the Senate yesterday talking about Venezuela, and the Hill had 5 main takeaways from Marco Rubio's testimony, which urged patience on U.S. efforts to rehabilitate Venezuela's oil industry and eventually return the country to democratic governance. And the secretary's remarks came during a hearing on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Rubio's first appearance before lawmakers since the Trump administration's operations. The Hill calls it audacious, very interesting. And that resulted in the capture of Venezuela's President Maduro earlier this month. So a couple of their takeaways is that Rubio doesn't take military force off the table. They said that, they quote Rubio as saying the president never rules out his options as commander-in-chief to protect the national interest of the United States. He set low expectations for a pace of change, and so obviously the timing is going to be a little longer, and Rubio said, I can't give you a timeline of how long it takes. It can't take forever, but it's not even been 4 weeks. That is pretty fair. Third, Rubio says current oil scheme fix is a short-term fix. Rubio corrected one of the senators from Wyoming that U.S. was not imposing a quote-unquote blockade on Venezuela, saying that would be an act of war, but that the U.S. had a quarantine in place to control oil exports. And also, both sides were frustrated with the lack of transparency, which was obvious between the banter between Rubio and Republican and Democrat lawmakers. So let's welcome in David Grantham, who is an author and former intelligence officer. What did you make of this testimony yesterday from the Secretary of State and where things are at with Venezuela?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I thought, my first impression, if I just get, a high-level view, is the Trump administration and President Trump in particular benefits enormously from having Marco Rubio as the Secretary of State because he's in his element testifying to the Senate. He knows the people. He knows the questions they're going to ask. He understands the approach he needs to take to counter and or weave through their different comments and criticisms. So, there's very few people in the administration, I think, that are in a position to communicate the priorities of the Trump administration accurately, calmly, and as sophisticated as Marco Rubio. But I think his overall points were well taken. I'll just point to two of them, really. I think he made the point that the senators often want to hem in an administration by getting, extracting promises, and he refused to do that. He said, no, military option is always on the table, and it comes off as some sort of maddening phrase or interpreted in the media as something more, frankly, more extreme than it actually is. He's merely saying, no, you're not going to hem us in. Those are our options. Number two, he explained precisely that Maduro had a arrest warrant out for him. So this was a legitimate operation. And to this movement from dialogue and talking to action always scares elected officials. They live in a world of issuing statements and things of the like. So to have a president that's so action-oriented always startles people. And so I think Marco Rubio was able to hone in on specifics on why the action took place and exactly what the benefits of that action and why we moved from talking to action. And also was able to navigate and keep open the options. The administration didn't fall victim to making promises or letting them hem in the administration to those senators' wishes.
Yeah, and I think that was really smart of him. I mean, he was forthright, certainly, in, and I didn't see the entire hearing, but at least from, the clips and the reports that I saw, he was very confident, very forthright, but also didn't get ahead of the president, didn't get ahead of what may need to be on the table in the coming weeks and months. I mean, they obviously have a handle on the situation, but a lot of things can change. So I agree with you that, he's not setting up the administration to have to answer to Congress if their strategy changes later. And so, when we're talking about a Secretary of State talking to the Senate in this type of context, what really is the purpose anyway of Rubio going and testifying to the Senate and even answering their questions about what's going on in Venezuela?
Well, I think the administration has made it their objective from the beginning to be as transparent as possible. And I think this is just another example of them putting people out there, letting them speak to the policies of the administration openly. And I think that's the overall objective of having him there. They don't have to do that, obviously, but it's in good taste. It's the American people deserve to know the details of how those things went down. And so I think the Trump administration is sticking to its plan of transparency.
Which is always a great thing. We need more transparency in all aspects of government, and that's definitely a good thing. Okay, so when he's talking about the oil industry. I know that that's been a huge focus, particularly on the foreign stage with with China as well, and some other countries that rely on the Venezuela's oil industry. And so, what role does this play? And from what Rubio was talking about yesterday, in the U.S. policy strategy?
Yeah, the oil, I think, it's been used as something to bludgeon the administration, and I think, frankly, inappropriately, and obviously those that disagree with the policies of the administration are looking for any opportunity to find a reason, and I think oil has kind of become that, and there's several reasons for that. Primarily because Venezuela, it's first and foremost natural resource that funds its economy comes from oil. Now, the challenge for Venezuela is it has heavy crude, which just means it's like a tar substance that has to be refined, and it also lacks storage capability, as Rubio pointed out. So the attempt with oil and the focus on oil within the post-Maduro Venezuela is really to use it to stabilize the Venezuelan economy. And I thought Rubio articulated well how they plan to manage that resource for the Venezuelans, not for the benefit of the United States per se. And that's where I think there initially people were trying to use oil as the reason for invasion, which is it sells well publicly, but on its face it's kind of silly. The U.S. exports is one of the leading exporters of oil, so we don't necessarily need oil. It's more designed to help Venezuela because that is their primary resource. That's going to be really the only way to build back their economy. So Rubio explained that there will be funds that are slated specifically for rebuilding that capacity, for selling that capacity, or selling the product and selling it at fair market value, not cheaply to cronies and adversaries like China, but allow people around the world to purchase Venezuelan oil at market price and have the proceeds of that go back to the Venezuelan people.
Yeah, and I'm speaking with David Grantham, who is a former intelligence officer, and that's a great point that a lot of people misunderstand the U.S. Our posture on oil and where that fits into the overall foreign policy strategy. But what I've heard, and from other guests on this program as well, is that it may not be for the U.S.'s own interest in terms of reliance ourselves on oil. Other countries, like for example China, do get a lot of their oil from Venezuela. And so, is there still an element, do you think, of strategy that went into this, or has it come out that the strategy for the United States, I mean, that may be a collateral benefit to kind of put China back on its heels, but the overall strategy was really just focused on Maduro, just focused on Venezuela, and some of that obviously the administration will just use as a maybe collateral or tertiary benefit.
No, I think you're exactly right. Any action the United States takes is not going to have. It's not going to have a singular benefit. An action to remove Maduro and then to largely leave in place the people that were around him, those sorts of decisions often, if not always, have multiple benefits, multiple contingencies. And I think you've really hit the nail on the head that the oil can be used to benefit the Venezuelan people and help rebuild the Venezuelan economy. But the collateral benefits are that it simply having U.S. control over how it's spent and how it's developed or at least U.S. oversight, that negatively impacts China, who greatly benefits from receiving discounted oil, and others, Russia, who have been sending Venezuela different sorts of technology and oil refining material. So it certainly has collateral benefits and undermines those adversaries that need to be undermined, and it does it in a way that doesn't require boots on the ground. It doesn't require kinetic engagement with an enemy. It merely undermines their economic capabilities, and that can be equal to the benefits of supporting the Venezuelan people.
And when Secretary of State Rubio urges patience, is this patience with reform or with regime change itself? Because at some point, patience becomes a risk of becoming a de facto acceptance of the regime currently staying in power. And do you think that the current U.S. policy is aimed at actually changing the Venezuelan government or simply changing its behavior? Because I think those are two very different strategies with very different outcomes.
Yeah, it's going back. The Trump administration chose this path primarily because of what we learned in the Iraq War. And I served in the Iraq War. I was an intelligence officer there, and I saw firsthand on the ground what happens when you remove a government official, even a one that's not recognized, illegitimate. When you remove the head, you have to be very careful how you extract the rest of the body. And in Iraq, they, as a refresher, Paul Bremer, who led the change there in Iraq, they removed all the Baathists, and the challenge in the Ba'ath Party was the party of Saddam. And when they did that, they said nobody who, and this is just one facet of it, but it was a significant one, when they said nobody who had Ba'ath Party affiliation could be part of the new government. Well, the problem with that was everybody was a Ba'ath Party affiliate by dumb luck or otherwise. It was a matter of self-preservation to be part of the Ba'ath Party, and for many people. And so what that did was it cleaned house, and it left a shell of government, and they didn't have anybody to run it. So Trump has said multiple times, we didn't want to do that because back in Iraq, all those people turned to ISIS or turned to insurgency. What we want to do, we think better, is to allow, although these people are corrupt and they've worked for Maduro, we think it better to keep them in place and manage them rather than gut the whole thing and try to rebuild it. So I don't think there's some infinite wisdom. I think there's geopolitics is a world of trade-offs, and the trade-off was it's easier to manage the devil than bringing in the devil you don't know.
Yeah, so well said. And in just about the last minute we have with you, I really appreciate it, David Grantham, your time today. What is ultimately the end game for the U.S. interests, and what would success actually look like there?
Yeah, I think success, as Marco Rubio pointed out yesterday, success would be ultimately free and fair elections, and that's going to be a tall order for the administration to get there. And I think Rubio was right to make sure everyone understood they need to have patience in that process. This isn't going to happen quickly, but that ultimately is going to be the end game, a stabilized political apparatus that allows for free and fair elections. And then secondarily is going to be the free flow of oil, that there is a process for how it's sold or how it's refined, made, harvested, sold, and the funds of that brought back to Venezuela and benefit the Venezuelan people in a legitimate way.
All right. Well, David Grantham, this is a really interesting story that we're continuing to follow with everything else going on in the country. Really appreciate your time. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
Hey, moms and dads, are you at your wits' end? Hi, this is Mark Gregston with Parenting Today's Teens. I'm so grateful for the partnership we have with American Family Radio. We share a common goal to bring hope to hurting families through the life-changing medium of radio. Be sure to listen Saturday afternoons at 4:30 Central on American Family Radio. Find help and hope for your family with Parenting Today's Teens.
Fostering and adoption is not a Band-Aid for infertility. It is a calling, and God can change the desire of your heart and make that so rewarding. It's the most beautiful, selfless thing. It's pure religion, but it's not a fix to I desire biological child. God has to deal with that in your heart separately.
Hannah's Heart, encouraging couples through infertility and miscarriage. Saturdays, 4 a.m. Central on AFR or on the AFR app.
He made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined their appointed times and the boundaries of their habitation. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. President Trump and his administration dropped the hammer on the international elites at Davos. After announcing globalism has failed, President Trump and his team stated candidly that the U.S. has been a blessing to the world, and we haven't asked for much in return. Now, it is best for our nation and for the world for the U.S. to have Greenland. We won't take it militarily, but we want it. Shortly thereafter, President Trump announced a framework for a Greenland deal was in place.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner, or visit the podcast page at afr.net for more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
The following is a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had a lot of credit card debt, and it stressed me out. But what I thought was a solution turned out to be a problem. I kept hearing ads about debt settlement that seemed too good to be true. And actually, it was. When I called, they told me to stop paying my bills. That didn't sound right to me at all, so I hung up. Later, I found out that debt settlement is bad, real bad. Then I learned that there is a right way to pay off your credit cards. It's called a debt management program from the great team at Trinity. Trinity had a plan. In the end, I paid off my bills, I saved thousands, and I even improved my credit score.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Heather. Please forget debt settlement and remember Trinity Debt Management.
1-800-788-1813.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. Well, sparks are flying in the Florida governor's primary between two of the Republican candidates. For our Congressman Byron Donalds and former House Speaker Paul Renner. Donalds posted a video late Tuesday night claiming he was present in the Florida House legislature when universal school choice was passed, when in fact universal school choice was enacted in 2023 under Speaker Paul Renner at a time when Donalds was in Congress, not the Florida legislature. So Renner's campaign has issued a statement and also a response video from Renner saying that misrepresenting legislative history is misleading to voters and undermines the integrity of the public record. Floridians deserve honesty. We are calling on Byron Donalds to immediately delete this false video from all platforms and issue a public correction. So here are the two videos back to back. First one from Byron Donalds and then the response video from Paul Renner. This is cut 3.
Hey everybody, I'm actually back in Tallahassee, and I remember my time in the State House when we were arguing for universal choice, and we got that passed during my time in the Florida House. It's National School Choice Week, and we want to make sure that everybody understands that our number one mission is to make sure that every child, regardless of zip code, is getting the best education possible. So it's actually kind of ironic that I'm back here in Tallahassee, kind of where it all began to a degree. But we argued for school choice here, delivered universal school choice here. We want to see that same thing happen for every child in America. God bless you guys. Take it easy.
Byron, you know that's a lie. Let's have an honest campaign with voters. So I wake up this morning to see Congressman Donalds on video literally claiming that he was here in the Florida House when we passed universal school choice. Byron, you know that's a lie because I passed universal school choice in 2023. You were nowhere near Tallahassee. You passed the Hope Scholarship, HB1, which was political theater and barely moved the needle. That was not universal school choice, and you know it. I know you have a thin record both in the House and in Congress, but do me a favor and don't run on mine. Let's have an honest campaign with voters. Let's tell them about my experience and yours, my record and yours, and let them make a decision. Honestly.
All right, you heard them both. Well, let's welcome in former House Speaker Paul Renner, who is a gubernatorial candidate in the great state of Florida. So far, Paul, Byron's camp has not deleted this video.
Yeah, I mean, my wife passed me this video, and I had to look at it a second time because I thought, I got to be hearing this wrong. He must be saying something, and there must be some ambiguity there, and what he meant to say. And, you know, there's only one universal, obviously, Jenna, which means that every kid in Florida has the right to this scholarship. And, you know, school choice started under Jeb Bush way back in the 90s, and we kept growing it. The bill Byron was involved in, the Hope Scholarship, was for kids that claimed they'd been bullied. And I don't know what the numbers are, maybe a couple hundred students, but it didn't move the needle. Universal School Choice in its first year had over 120,000 new students in it, bigger than the entire state of Arizona's school choice program combined. So he was nowhere near Tallahassee. He left in 2020 to run for Congress. And, you know, it begs a couple questions. If he's lying about that, what else is he hiding from us or lying about, and how little record he really has that he's got to run off of mine?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think for voters in Florida, you know, as someone who is now in Florida, but, you know, I remember when I was still in my former home state of Colorado, just kind of, you know, watching things on the news and everything. Unless you're here, like, on the ground and involved in local and state politics, there's a lot that really doesn't get communicated just from cable news hits, which seems to be Byron Donald's sort of go-to audience. And so what in your knowledge and opinion of your record, Byron Donald's record, is really important for Florida voters to know?
Well, it's you know, a Grand Canyon gap between us. And so those two big productive years in 2022 through 2024, you know, James Madison called it the session of the century. We did universal school choice. We pushed back against ESG, corporate welfare. We passed the Heartbeat Protection Act. We ended DEI. We protected kids on social media from online pornography and addictive media platforms. You know, we did constitutional carry to protect our Second Amendment rights, and the list goes on and on and on. And he has really no record. He spent his entire career advancing himself politically for this moment. He was telling us back in 2016 he was going to run for governor. When he was in our class, he ran against me for speaker. So we were in the state house together for 4 years. He had an unremarkable record then. He has an unremarkable record now in Congress, and is coming in to get a job promotion when he's really not shown up and delivered for the people that he represents. And so people are sick and tired of politicians who go into office and it becomes all about themselves, whether it's self-promotion on the media or it's getting rich in office or, you know, other things that politicians do that really disgust us, and has not shown up to deliver the big wins. The governor said as much on many occasions about Congressman Donalds. People who know him know that he's been someone who's been opportunistic his entire time in office from day one. In comparison, as a former veteran, we focused on the mission. I'm not going to let ego and arrogance and all that comes with politics get in the way of delivering results for the people of Florida. We're going to lean in. We helped build the state of Florida into what it is, and we're going to keep it going. Nobody wants to go backwards after Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, and I think that's what Florida voters really want to see, is someone who will follow in the legacy of Governor DeSantis, not to be, exactly the same, but it's the same way that we want someone on the Supreme Court to replace, Justice Scalia with someone just as great, right? Instead of going backwards and saying, okay, we had this seat for conservatism, for great leadership, for the executive in particular, for governance, and we don't want to go backwards or have, kind of a Republican in name only, or somebody who's squishy, or as I have learned through social media and otherwise, that Byron Donalds was a Democrat, in fact, like right before he started to run for office. And as your social media accounts continue to push out, some of his policies seem way more in line with the Democrats than Republicans, like being soft on crime. He had a statement that was actually pro George Floyd. I mean, back in 2020, we all remember the whole COVID narrative. And, a lot of these things that really don't add up to being a Republican, at least in the sense that Florida wants to follow Governor DeSantis. But it seems like there is there's a wide gap between the perception of Byron Donalds versus the reality of his record.
Well, he gives a good speech. He gives a good interview. He's missed a lot of votes in Congress giving interviews and not really shown up to do his own job. But, I think it's evident if you look at times when he's dropped his guard, he has shown, and even in the state house, he pursued busting our truth in sentencing law. So everybody's supposed to serve 85% of their sentence. And it was a big reform because we had these criminals that soft on crime policies back in the 70s and 80s and high crime. And this was one of the things that made Florida safe. He wanted to go back to 65%. So a guy gets a 10-year sentence, he's on the street corner in 6.5 years. And then in the case of George Floyd, saying that we have a problem of police brutality in America. And regardless of what you think of that one incident, are there bad people in law firms and teachers and cops? Sure, you can find a bad egg somewhere. But the idea that there's some systemic problem is what is the language of the left, that we have a problem with police that are itching to, beat up somebody or kill somebody. And so he's shown himself to be weak on crime and on the wrong side of the law and law enforcement his entire career. I'm the only prosecutor in the race and have been strong when it came to all things law enforcement as speaker, one of which was the HALO Act that we passed during that time, which says you've got a 25-foot buffer when police say, stand back, I'm in the middle of an arrest or trying to do my job. You have to stand back, and if you get in their face like some of these people have done, you can be arrested. That probably would have saved a life in Minnesota. And so we got after it. We've leaned in. It's less talk, more action. For me, he's been all talk and self-promotion his entire career.
Yeah, and Governor DeSantis has been very clear that Byron Donalds, in terms of policy, is not aligned with him, and yet he hasn't taken, at least yet, the step to endorsing any other candidate in this race for the primary. And in fact, an interview dropped yesterday from Julio Rosas and his mostly peaceful.media. You can see that full interview at his Substack. And when he asked Governor DeSantis about giving an endorsement, DeSantis said this, quote, "I've gotten involved in some primaries, but it's usually when there's a candidate that's really speaking my language, and I'm really excited to get behind. So if that happens, then people will know if I make that judgment. It's not then, it's just what it is. You have to wait and see. You got to be right on policy. There are policies that get proposed even in a Republican state that are not good policies, and you've got to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff on that." And DeSantis goes on to say that he'll look at the field around spring. This kind of flies in the face of one of the other candidates in this race, current Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins, who has basically been running on his appointment and almost on social media saying, hey, because I was appointed Lieutenant Governor, that means that I'm running with DeSantis, and almost, not quite, but almost trying to parlay that into, hey, so therefore I'm endorsed. What's your response to that?
Well, look, a campaign is a long, months-long job interview, and we get to observe people under pressure. We get to observe and look deeply into their leadership experience and their record. And, I've seen them post a lot of videos where the governor was saying nice things that are 6 months old. And so Our perspective on people change over time, and I think if you look at my record, what you'll see is someone who at the age of 23 was on the deck of the USS McInerney in the first of two wars I served in 20 years later in Afghanistan. I've had positions of trust, leadership under pressure my entire life. I've been a consistent conservative in my 10 years in the legislature, and especially as speaker when I could control what bills moved and what didn't move. And I listed some of those for you earlier in the program. And so if you want somebody who will keep the free state of Florida, I was a key architect in building it. And, the speaker is next to the governor, probably the second most powerful person in Tallahassee, because you move those pieces of legislation and the governor can only sign what's sent to him. And so all those things I listed were things that the House of Representatives really drove. We had good partnerships with the Senate and frankly, with the lieutenant governor on a couple of bills that he helped with. But the point is, you've got to have somebody who has been leading, and I've had that in the military. As a prosecutor, I was picked in leadership positions, and of course, running 500 or so employees in the state house and guiding that legislation through for 2 years under a lot of controversy. And people ask you, are you going to stand up and not buckle? Well, just look at my record. I've done it over and over again and stood up to a lot of special interest and a lot of heat coming. And I could care less whether the media attacks me. When they attack me, I know I'm over the target.
So do you think it sounds like from everything that the governor said, including on my show a couple weeks ago, I know that you've seen that clip as well. Do you think the governor has leveled the playing field?
Well, sure he has. I know there's no question about it that he's not picked anybody in this race. We know where he is on Congressman Donalds because he's been very vocal about it and said the things I've said today, which is there's zero leadership experience. I'm not aware of anything he's ever led. There's no record of substance either in the House or in Congress. And the governor rightly wants somebody who has been a leader. And so, but you've got to go out and raise the money. You got to get, in front of the voters. You got to do all those things. And it's right for anyone in the governor's position to wait until people start paying attention more to this race. Many people, probably are not focused on the race yet. Those of us that are in politics and active in politics are. And so as that develops and we see that this is becoming a two-person race between me and Congressman Donalds, which I believe it is already, then at that point, we hope to obviously have the governor's support and most importantly, the support of true conservatives in this state. There's a difference between a campaign conservative and a true believer, and I'm a true believer.
All right, and you can go to voterunner.com and also follow the former House Speaker on X and Facebook and Instagram and also now TikTok, and also at Renner War Room, which has gotten a lot of attention, actually, and the Floridian had an article out, Paul Renner targets spoofs Byron Donalds with unique social media strategy. There have been a lot of these viral memes that I've even heard from people in Tallahassee that are just, loving it and wanting to follow this. Is this part of the overall strategy to show Byron's record, but kind of maybe with a little bit of fun and humor as well?
That's exactly it. And people need to know the truth. And so we're laying out the truth. We're putting the receipts on the table, both the negative ones about him that people need to know. They need to know what they're signing up for. He's hiding behind, an endorsement and a bunch of money he's raised and not going to the voters, not talking candidly about those questions of leadership and results because he doesn't have any. And we're also telling the story about mine. And that's a positive record, a very positive record that's been consistent and somebody who's not afraid for the fight, who will take on the left, whether it was Amendment 3 and 4, and will go wherever we have to go because the left hasn't given up, and they certainly haven't given up on Florida. You've got to have somebody who's willing to go into the fight. I've done it in the military as a prosecutor and a speaker, and in the end, when people have a fair comparison between me and Congressman Donalds, I'll be your next governor, and Congressman Donalds will not, thankfully, and he needs to go back to Congress or really back home, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Speaker Paul Renner, for coming on the program. And I would encourage everyone in Florida to not only plan to get out and vote in the primaries. Primaries matter. The primary in Florida is August 18th. If you're in a state where your governor is up for a re-election, or like in Minnesota, Tim Walz is not running, well, this is an opportunity for you to change leadership. So these positions absolutely matter. Get to know all of the candidates, follow them. Don't just follow what they say about themselves. Follow them. Look at their record and look at what they will actually accomplish. It's so incredibly important, as much as, if not more, even than the presidency, because we still do have 50 laboratories of democracy, as it said. So, as always, you can reach me and my team, Jenna, at afr.net.